Yeah! Rugby. It's Tuesday, my dudes. Rugby update day. Let's look into the latest Super Rugby trans rights news. So, the rest of the rugby world has figured out what I said last week. The Super Rugby Trans-Tasman comp, for the New Zealand sides at least, is about bonus points and points difference. The poor Aussie sides have been turned into little more than piñatas to be beaten mercilessly for 80 minutes until the points come spilling out. The Hurricanes started the Great Harvest with a 35-13 win over the Rebels on Friday. Good, but when you remember the Blues beat the Rebels by 47 points, the Hurricanes are already behind there. The coolest part for me was seeing the bus, Mr. Julian Savia, scoring tries again and breaking the franchise try-scoring record. Or not. There was some confusion on Twitter. In the next match, the Force gave another okay account of themselves, this time against the Highlanders. They did lose, but by a lot less than their peers. The Highlanders only beat them by 10 points, so they are now a bit behind the other New Zealand sides for qualification for the finals. The Blues continued their points collection by beating the Waratahs 48-21. Kudos to the Waratahs for scoring some points, but the Blues are now way ahead on points difference on the top of the log. For the Blues, Bryce Heem overcame the wind resistance provided by his ears, and he scored a hat-trick. And also, Rico Ioane has been given a lot more space by the Aussie side, so he's been very fun to watch. The man might look like a tool with that mustache, but that tool is a weapon. The Brumbies were one of the Aussie sides I tipped to give the New Zealand sides a little bit more trouble, what with them having a good pack and all. That tip did not age well. The Chiefs took them apart over 80 minutes. Didn't even look hard. Even the best Aussie sides are giving the Kiwis way too much space to attack. Anton Leonard-Brown had been looking okay to even good in the 13 channel this year, but nothing spectacular. With all the space the Brumbies gave him, he looked fantastic. That was a bit of a pattern in this weekend's games if you want to look into those things. In every game not involving stingy Richie, the centers for the Kiwis were shining like stars. Tries were raining down on them like manna from heaven. This kind of makes me suspect the Aussies are not cutting off the ball from going out wide. They need to put more pressure on the 10 and 12s. And now the last match, the great slaughter of Brisbane. Crusaders 63, the Reds 28. That man, Richie, he ran for 138 meters, beat 6 defenders, got 4 clean breaks, scored 3 tries and 31 points in total, all from the fly-off position against the Aussie champs in Brisbane. He just had way too much space and time and wasn't being put under any pressure. I mean, the Reds did score some amazing tries, but the Crusaders were cruising for that whole match. When you see Richie in that much space, it's almost like if Cheslin Kolbe took some of his points out of agility and just put it into like kicking and passing. The man can sidestep people in a phone booth and still play the fly-off role. It is incredible to watch. Now, since the weekend, people have been happily dogpiling onto the Aussie misery. It's almost as if people don't realize that these New Zealand clubs would take anyone to the cleaners. There's one, maybe 2 teams in South Africa, and then maybe 1 team from France, England, and Ireland that could stand up to these guys. Everyone else would get embarrassed as well. I think it would be better if people shut up with the ridicule and give more constructive criticism, especially some South African journalists. It's not the Aussies' fault that they live next to rugby-mad pit bulls who just want to eviscerate everything in their sight. My advice to the Aussies? The same as to the South African sides that used to get whooped by these guys. Take the knocks, learn lessons, be patient and work hard. You can do it, guys. So, what about South Africa? The Rainbow Cup, of course. The Stormers got their second win on the road, making up for their 2 losses at home. Maybe they don't like that fancy new stadium. This time it was the Sharks who lost to a last-minute Mackenzie-esque penalty from the average man Tim Swiel. What's been good for me is seeing the quality from Siya Kolisi and Pieter Steph du Toit in their last 2 matches. It has been said, but it bears repeating. Some players come back from months off and immediately perform. That's du Toit. Other players need a little bit more time to build up steam. That's Kolisi. Either way, their form bodes well for a little tour coming up later this year. And now for the real Lions. I'm just happy, you know. My team finally won a game. Against the Bulls nogal. I did age multiple years throughout the match again, and the Lions were trying to defend the game with 2 minutes to go again, But at least this time they were smart and they got it into the Bulls half first. The most pleasing thing about the Lions' recent form is their scrum. That's 2 weeks in a row now that they've pushed back a Springbok front row. I don't think it's a coincidence that the scrum's looking much better now that Willem Alberts is back at lock. The man is there for a lot more than his bone-breaking tackles. Having Alberts and the other bone-breaker Dwayne Vermeulen on the field at the same time must make it quite scary for other players. Let's go north! 2 finals were played over the weekend, both won by French teams. The first, slightly less prestigious final was for the European Challenge Cup. Montpellier won it by beating the Leicester Tigers. It was a pretty good final with 2 tries apiece and multiple lead changes. But in the end, Handré Pollard and his French mates won it. The other final was the big one, rugby's equivalent of the Champions Cup in football. In that match, Toulouse was the victor against La Rochelle, claiming their 5th title. This was a much tighter affair with the boots of the fly-offs dictating most of the proceedings. Unfortunately for La Rochelle, one of their players had a brain fart and got red carded in the 27th minute. That was always going to make victory a lot harder. Now as a Safa, what was most pleasing was seeing all the Springboks littered throughout these champion squads doing very well. We'll need all the help we can get come a certain tour later this year. Also, what a unique position South African rugby finds itself in. We can just look at any uncapped overseas player and be like, yes, you have been murdering people goodly over there in the Premiership or wherever. Do you want to come for a braai at Jacques and Rassie's house? That's the rugby update for this week. I'll see you next week. Bye.